Left, right?
There we
Okay, thanks, Shelly. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. It is a pleasure for us to welcome you for this event today, Sunday the 18th. My name is Johannes Rojas, and I'm gonna be your host, aside with Joel Blanco. We are the directors of the Uterus Corner. Today we have a very special guest, Professor Shelly Sanchez Terrell. She's one of the greatest educators I have ever met and very inspiring. And she has consented to be with us today in helping us in this series of webinar that we have been launching during 2020. So, Shelly, welcome to this webinar. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Well, I'm excited to be here. And of course, I cannot tell you no because you're one of the most inspiring teachers that I have met. One of the only ones to bring me to tears by your stories of how much you do with your students. So,
Great, Shelly. So before Shelly starts, I'm gonna read a little bit about her for those who don't know. I mean, the job Shelly is been doing in teaching live. So Shelly is an award-winning digital innovator, international speaker, and the author of Hacking Digital Learning: Ways to Launch EdTech Missions, the 30-goal challenge for teachers, Teacher Reboot Camp, and Learning to Go. She has trained teachers and taught learners over 20 countries as a guest expert and ambassador from the U.S. Embassy. She was named Woman of the Year by the National Association of Professional Women and received a Bammy Award as the founder of EdChat. So that's just a little of what Shelly is and she has done for our community. And today she's going to be sharing with us a little bit about her job, what she does. Okay, as you can realize, I mean, as you saw, the name of the webinar today is essential elements for effective online learning, which is the area of expertise that Shelly has. So Shelly, once again, thank you for joining us, and we're gonna be starting just now. Questions are gonna be addressed at the end, but we're gonna be taking them, from the chat and everything, so we can direct it to Shelly. Shelly's also going to make maybe some yes/no questions or simple questions to the audience, so feel free to answer the questions on the chat. Okay, so Shelly, welcome and go for it.
well, thank you so much. And what I should note is one of the countries that I got to meet Johannes was in Venezuela, and I really, really enjoyed my time there. So it is great to be able to travel the distance and to be able to have you all wherever you are in the world. And so I want to take you on a little bit of a virtual trip. So behind me, you will notice my beautiful hometown of San Antonio, Texas. This is actually the Riverwalk, and that is where I'm from. Currently, I do teach in Texas, and I am teaching elementary. But the elements that I am sharing with you today are for young learners all the way into adults. And I have taught from now, my daughter is 3 years old, and I've taught from her age and even younger, 2 years old, all the way to much older. Okay. And so right now I'm in a hybrid situation. That means that I teach virtual, just like this, but I also teach with students in my classroom. And so I'm going to show you how I manage everything. And hopefully these tips will really kind of bring some peace to you as well. You can find all of these materials and resources and tips, including the presentation at shellycharles.com/elearn. And that's really important because I tend to share so much. It may seem a little overwhelming, but it's really because I want you to have those resources. And so don't feel that you will miss anything. It's really wonderful. The other's corner is going to have this on YouTube so that it will be a recording for you that you can revisit again and again. Right now, I do agree with Guy Kawasaki that if we're going to put someone up, it's going to be on a pedestal, then that should be the teachers. And the reason why is because you are really giving your heart to so many. You're giving your heart and your care to students, their families, and also to your own families, and juggling all of this more than ever. And right now, this is such a great thing that you do, because if students were left on their own, and it doesn't even matter if they're adults or very little, but at all ages, if people are left in their homes and their minds aren't stimulated into other adventures, learning adventures, then right now all they would have to think about is the really tough life we all have right now, with everything that's going on. So when we do teach, when we do are excited about learning, then that helps our minds to think of a future of our studies, and what could possibly be. And that really takes our minds to a more joyful place, or a place that is just not from the current situation. And so the best way that I can really help you today is by giving you resources and by giving you some tips. And these are, free templates and resources to help you with any ease your stress, and also to give you some time. I'm basing this on this model, which is the 4 elements of effective distance learning from McIsaac and Gunawardena. And the reason why is because this has been my experience in my over decade of experience teaching on different platforms such as Moodle or Google Classroom or now Schoology, and Canva. I've taught on many different learning management systems or virtual learning environments. And so I have found this model, these 4 elements, to be very true. And I love that there's only 4 elements. So we're going to dive into them. But the main focus, what to remember of this, is the idea of limiting distance. So right now, I'm here in Texas, but you may be in Japan, you may be in Greece, you may be in Peru, you may be all over the world. And how can we limit that space? How can it feel like I am connected to you because we are learning together? And so that's what this model really is about. It is about connection, and it's about increased communication. And I really enjoy that about this model. This is actually a 13 page website of all the research that they have conducted. And so you can read more about that. That link is in at shellyterrell.com/elearn. Plus, you will read that in about 2 weeks in the newsletter. I've written an article, and you'll be able, if you have subscribed. So let's take a look at the first one, which is transactional distance. And what this really is talking about is our connection with our students. How do we make it to where, if it's a brand new student, if I haven't met you before in person, how can we have that strong relationship? How can we, and of course that's going to be with communication. And that's something that the researchers have asked, the scholars have asked to do, is how can you design your online learning or your distance learning to where you can add that dialogue in there, or that increased communication. And so these are a few ways of that practical ways you can do this. The first is you need a learning management system. You need and there's the most kind of popular one right now is Google Classroom, because it's free and there are so many resources there. In fact, I just remembered, I'm going to go back to that website, and I will go ahead and link to an entire presentation of tips I have on Google Classroom. So if you want to learn more about how to design Google Classroom, how to grade faster, I'll put a link to a previous presentation I've done with that. But these that's really your learning management system is going to be that hub. It's going to be that classroom. If you know that physical classroom you have, well, now that is a virtual classroom for you, in addition to a live session. So I do believe that some kind of live session is very important as well. And if you have a recording, then that's a way to get it to everyone. So that way, they, even if they can't attend the live session, or they miss some of it, or their internet connection isn't that great, they're still able to go back and revisit when it is much better. The other part is how that feedback. So when you're on distance learning, when you're doing distance learning, it's super important to have immediate feedback, and there are ways to do that. We'll look a little bit at that. There are resources, shellyterrell.com/elearn. But right now, what I want to really focus on are these check-ins, because those are very quick, they're very fast, and you can do that. Students of all ages really, really do enjoy this. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then the other part is to have those virtual hours, those times when students are really, really struggling, a way to say, hey, you can jump in a Zoom, or you can jump in a WhatsApp, or something like that, where you can constantly give them help. But also, you let them know these are the hours and these are the dates when that is best, that best meets my schedule as well. So let's go ahead and check in, and Johannes is going to tell me how you all are feeling today. But let's see how you're feeling on this lovely Sunday. Some of you might be approaching Monday, but you sometimes we call this fist to five. I've only put 4 elements here, but the 4 elements are: if you give me a 4 and you put this in the chat, that means you're excited for this presentation, you're ready to learn. 3 is you're happy to be here, or you're feeling okay. And number 2 is you feel really tired. It is a little bit early, or very, very late in some countries. Or number 1, which is you're not feeling that great at all. And so the great thing about this is, with this check-in, I have a check-in like this first thing that students come into my Zoom sessions. And the reason we do this is because then I know my 4s are going to lead discussions. My 4s I'm going to ask questions to. So I think Johannes is a 4, so I would ask him a question, or I would say, hey, can you unmute yourself and answer this question? And then he would feel happy and be okay with it. And then I know my 1s are who I'm gonna say, hey, let's have a virtual meetup later, or I'm gonna private chat them and say, how's your day, what's going on, is there any way that I can help? Let's try and get you to feel, a lot better. And then that really helps you take care of the needs of your students. The other way I can use this is I can focus it. I can ask them, okay, if I know I'm going to give them a pop quiz, and I see that everybody's a 2 and a 1, maybe they got a quiz from somebody else, or it was grades and they just didn't do as well as they thought. If I have 2s and 1s, that pop quiz is not going to happen that day. I'm going to change it to the next day, okay? So check-ins are a great way to quickly assess your students. Now, a one that older students love, well, actually all students love, is on a scale of Baby Yoda, how are you feeling today? So which Baby Yoda do you think that you feel today? My students love to, on these, they love them. And usually they want to be more than one Baby Yoda. So they'll usually tell me a story about this in the chat. They type, oh, well, I started with a 4, but now I'm kind of a 5. But I'm also kind of a 9. And so they will let you know all kinds of stories. And then I let them know, okay, I'll ask a few, okay, why are you number 2 today? Just to kind of see if they understand the emotion it is and why they're feeling this way. And you get all kinds of great stories, and you get to know about your students. I take about 5 minutes with this, so it doesn't take a long time, but we've all gotten to learn about that student, and we've all also I also have that check and know about them. And also during this process, when I'm hearing about their stories or they get to voice how they feel, and me just asking them how they feel every day is really meaningful. It makes your students feel like you're listening to them and you really care about their welfare and their wellness. So I'm going to ask Johannes, what kind of Yoda does most of the audience feel like? What is the popular baby Yoda today?
Well, let me tell you that the most popular baby Yoda is number nine. I don't know why. Even for me, I put nine myself.
Well, that's great. That means you all get a pop quiz. I'm just kidding. And then we come to the element of learner control. And this is really about increasing that autonomy, that student ownership of their learning. And a lot of teachers really struggle right now because a lot of students, you can't reach over the computer no matter how much you want to. You can't reach over the computer and let your student know you have to turn in your work, or you have to. And there's so many times we want to do that, because if we were in a physical classroom, we could give them that paper, we could give them whatever it is, and hover over them and make sure they're doing it. But in virtual learning, that has to really be a decision and a motivation within the student. And so, McIsaac and Gunawardena really did a lot of research on this as well, and have talk about how we can do this within the design of our classrooms. So I'm going to show you some practical ways to do that, but really it's about student voice and student choice. And so when we look at this, how can we increase student voice? Well, there are some free web tools out there, and with everything that's going on, I do believe it's really important that you limit your tool choices. Ease students into one or two tools because they're still learning about each tool, and that can be part of the reason why they're not completing work, especially if they don't have a great connection. Having too many tools, it can be very challenging. So usually, for example, when I have an assessment, I let my students all turn off their cameras, so that way that the bandwidth will be better in the Zoom. So I want them to focus and to be able to take that assessment. And I will sometimes also, when I choose a tool like Flipgrid is an awesome tool. It is a free tool for educators. It has built-in support for all kinds of learners. It has what's called an immersive reader. And what Flipgrid is an online discussion tool. You give your students a code, they record their own quick video. They can put, think of it as a Snapchat sort of for education, and they can put smiley faces if they don't want to show, or they can even just make a text comment now. It's a quick way to give feedback, but it's made for education. They can respond to each other's responses. I believe it even has a filter so it can check whenever students may have said a certain word that's maybe unfavorable, and I believe that it'll report it, or it'll beep it. I've never had that issue yet, but that's what I have heard that the tool can do. It also has immersive reader built in. An immersive reader is a Microsoft tool that is amazing. It helps with dyslexia, it helps with language learners, and it also helps with those who have some literacy issues. And so there's so much that you can do with Flipgrid, and I highly recommend it. Students love it. In my summers, when I was teaching summer school, some of my students would do no assignments except for Flipgrid. So they would have done no kind of assignments I ever put in the 4 weeks, but they did all the Flipgrid. So it's a great option, and there's a lot of learning that can be accomplished there as well. So I definitely say try it. And it works with learners of all ages. Some other free ones that I list on the website are Nearpod, Pear Deck, Padlet, Jamboard, Linowit, and Bunsey. So all of those are student creativity, student voice. And when I'm in a Zoom session, it's easy to call on a few students, but I teach over 30 students per class. They do attend. They have been great attending for the last 9 weeks. There have been very, very little times when maybe two or three don't show up out of the, and that's 127 every day in a session. And they show up, they want to be there. And it's because we use these tools. They're a Pear Deck, and just to let you know, so some of them are completely free. You can, but they do have limits, of course. Jamboard is completely free. You get lots of Jamboards. Linowit is the same way. And but with Padlet, Bunsey, Pear Deck, and Nearpod, they're either free trials or they give you a limited amount. But they're so worth trying. Even the 30 days of Pear Deck, your students will all get to participate all at once with one slideshow. They get to vote, they get to draw, they get to go on virtual field trips. So it's really, really a wonderful experience for students. The other way I give my students their own control. And all of this, just to let you know, is a way of giving students ownership of their own learning. So at some point, I've been teaching for several years, but for this semester, 9 weeks. And, most of that, well, all of that is virtual, but we do have some students that are in the physical classroom, but they still have to do the virtual. And learner control isn't something you're going to see necessarily in the first week. They're not going to get it. It is something that you constantly practice. So with all of these four elements, give it time. And maybe not the first lesson, all of them are going to take ownership, or you're going to get 100% participation, or you're going to get 100% where they're turning in that work. But eventually you're going to see more and more and more as they learn how to do this, as they understand these are the expectations, as they have more fun getting to know you and their classmates in this distance learning platform. And so it's important to let students lead discussions, introduce a lesson, or even you have your future, assistant teacher that is one of your students. You always have a student, sometimes usually more than one, who understands and has read all the materials and who is super excited to be there and has just done everything. And so they can help you, they can help others as well. And so these are some of the student jobs I have during an online platform like this where we're all together live. I have a co-host. I let my students be my co-host and they help greet others. Those who are tardy, they let them know this is what we are doing, and I don't have to stop my time and do that. So they know how to do this. They share any codes. So if you're using Nearpod or you're using Flipgrid, they'll give those students the code too. So that's another job. Another job is a chat help and a chat monitor who lets me know, this person is spamming, or this person is not focusing on the chat. Maybe they're talking about a cat or something. But sometimes it's good. They let me know when it's a student has a serious problem and needs some help as well. An exit ticket checker, so that means at the end of the lesson, before we say goodbye to each other, they have to finish a really quick assessment. And so the students I will show the names, where it just shows the names when they complete it. And then while I'm taking attendance or doing something, that student will say, bye, I see your exit ticket. Okay. Tech support, someone that understands. If I see that someone has strong internet, if I see that they're just really great with Zoom or know things, then some of my students will give tech support. I can put them in a breakout room with someone and say, look, they're having problems, can you walk them through it? And they do a good job of doing that. And finally, the summarizer, the one that at the end of the lesson, they're gonna share with their peers what the lesson was about, what were the top, objectives, or that we should have left with by the end of the lesson. Another way that I've done this, and I started this past week, we grew into this point. We go in a lot of breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are so great for your students. They give your students an opportunity to talk with each other, to get to know each other. And we're going to talk about that element in a little bit. That was with the research as well. But my students love this so much that so what it is they get to choose what kind of workroom. And even with Google Meet now, they're having breakout rooms, but I have put resources, so whether you're on Teams or Meet or Zoom, you will be able to do this. It does take a little bit of time to begin with. This is a new feature that Zoom rolled out as well, which is where students get to choose which breakout room they want to go to. Most of the time, it didn't really Zoom didn't make it work this time, but I was able to. I was able to say, okay. And what I do is I label it. I say in number one is the teacher help room. That's where if you need help with this project that we're doing, and this week we built boats. We had to build a cargo ship and see how much weight our boat could carry. So those that were struggling, they went to number one, or if they thought they didn't have the materials. Then the one where they want to talk with their friends, they want to be in the mic, they're the ones who are, want to be the party app people, then they can be in group. Well, I have a few of those, 2 and 3 and 4, okay? And then the last two rooms, 5 and 6, are quiet rooms. That means I like to work quietly. I only want to do the chat. I don't want to do my video. I kind of want to be left alone to build my boat, okay? And so I did this, and the students loved it. One student loved it so much, she made me a Google slide presentation and gave me a teacher award and a gold star. So the students really, really enjoy when you trust them. Of course, I can't be in every breakout room, but I jump in. I jump in just to make sure, like surprise visits, and that way I can make sure that they are focused and that they're working on what needs to be worked. And they also understand that if they don't, then I have to end the session and they have to come back. To also help with that, I give students roles. So these are some things that you would see in a physical classroom as well. So if you already give jobs in your classroom, if you already give roles in your classroom and responsibilities, then these work online as well. Right now, so these are in steps. We are learning these. We have a captain, we have a co-captain with older learners. If you have university, if you have high school or adults, then these become, you can do all four, and they usually can do it within the first round. Usually what we do is we do 2 breakout sessions with this, and we have found that the first breakout session where we had these roles, they kind of play with, they're still getting to know them. And then we have a second breakout within the same live session. And by then they're talking, they're animated, they're focused on the lesson, and they're sharing. So for some reason, maybe we have to do more research, but we found this with our group of students, with our 127, that worked in all the cases. And so the first one is they have the captain, and then we let them know you can edit and adapt this the way you want to. Usually I only have 2 bullet points, and these are just examples of what happens. So they fill out a team Google form or a team slide or some kind of task you have to give them. The captain makes sure that everyone participates and has the final say about a team conflict. Answer a discussion question, anything you want them to do. The second is the co-captain, and they're the ones who get to use the ask for help feature or to come to the teacher in case there are difficulties, or in case they can't, the group needs extra help that nobody in that group can help with. Then finally the final step is to ask the teacher, and the co-captain does this. The co-captain also checks the grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So it makes sure after all the group work is finished that they're going to make sure that it's correct, okay? And then the note taker is the one that takes the notes and also may serve as a co-presenter. And then finally, the timekeeper to make sure that the group is on time, that they understand how many minutes they have for the task, whether it be 5 minutes. And then they also may be a reporter for the class as well. In fact, they're the main presenter of that group. And so the other part of this of learner control is student choice. And the way you give student choices, there are different types of choice boards, and so many amazing, incredible teachers have shared these next few slides I'm going to show you. They have shared them for you for free. All you have to do, and I've put this inside shellyterrell.com/elearn, is how to make a copy of it, because that's usually the biggest struggle. And then it's your copy. You can edit this any way that you want. You can take out the icons. You can say, oh, I want to call it, whatever I want to call it, step A instead, or I want to call it A and B. You want to change the pink and the blue, you can do all that. And teachers have made this for free from you. One of the teachers I follow on Twitter that shares so many different amazingly designed templates like this is History Sandoval. And so I would definitely recommend following her and Miss Park. And they're great language learner teachers as well as history teachers. But here's one type of choice board. Another one is this type of choice board. So really it's what you prefer, what you want to do to give students a choice on how to accomplish a lesson. The choice boards, some of them are the lesson for the week, okay? So they get to choose one, and I'll show you what that looks like. On this particular template, they learn, and then they choose what they're going to watch, and then they get to choose how they're going to apply their learning. On this type of choice board, this would be for the entire week. This would be their big project for the week, because they choose number 5, and then from there they have to choose 2 more. Okay. In this type of choice board, and this is from Ariana, she does a lot of training, so you may have heard of her as well. And she's from Zagreb, Croatia. So she did this one that looks like a menu. You choose 1 appetizer, 1 main course, and 1 dessert. And so these are all fun ways that students can click, and then they get to have ownership of that lesson. And so you'll see that a lot more students are turning it in. You might think, okay, well, how am I going to grade it if it is all these different lessons? Let's say that one student, Bob, turns in a podcast, and then your other student has directed an entire play, and she turns in, Maria, she turns in a play. And then another one, let's say Julie, has turned in a video newscast, right? So the best way that I would say to give feedback and to grade, if you have to grade, is to do a rubric. Do they meet the criteria? Did they get the learning targets? If it's about the elections, how to vote, or what kinds of governments, did they cover that? Check. Okay, then they get the 4 points or whatever for that. When you're in a rubric, that's what a rubric is, and then give feedback. Mechanics is always one of the rubric questions. Did they have good spelling, and did they have good grammar? And then that would be another check. So you're grading on the rubric, and you can grade all of that with a rubric. So there is a way to have that choice and have different, and still have students all achieving the same objectives. And that's how I would do it. The other part is to make sure that when you present this, it is clickable. So you notice that Ariana here, she has a link to plastic pollution or single use. And so that will click to the instructions and the template and everything for that particular lesson. And when you do a choice menu item like this, the appetizer is usually something that is either not graded or graded in seconds. It's like an online quiz or something that's very, very easy. It grades it for you, okay? And then the main course can be that part that you will have to grade with like a rubric or something. And then we have interaction. So with the interaction, we do have where and this is where the scholars say to make it in the design that you increase that communication and also that relationship between the peers, the content, and the instructor. So we talked about the instructor with transactional distance, but with interaction, it really emphasizes the content and the peers. And so if you design, and yes, they are saying to increase that relationship, and I love this, with your learning management system, with your Google Classroom. How can your students are going to spend so much time on their learning management system? You want them to spend hours, 5 days a week with it. So, how can you make that a more enjoyable experience where they're not just frustrated and tearing their hair out? And so, when you think about that and you put yourself in the learner's shoes, then you may design lessons differently. So when I've worked with teachers, sometimes they have, okay, I put up a PDF. How is that student going to complete the PDF? If they don't have a printer at home, or if they can't write on the PDF, they don't have Adobe or anything to do that, then we start thinking, okay, well, maybe what could I do? What is a way I could do this, Shelly? And then I could tell them, okay, Google Slides or Google Drawing. And then all of a sudden, I can give them these tips, takes a few tweaks, like maybe even a minute, and then all of a sudden it is great for the student. The student is able to quickly do it. They're able to quickly draw. If it becomes a Google drawing, they're able to quickly draw on it. They can complete that task, instead of making it a PDF. So what are ways that you can make a design to where every student gets about, and usually there's a rule that's called the 3-click rule. You lose them after 3 clicks. So as much as you can go 3 clicks and below, then that's really great. At this point, Johannes, are there any questions or comments or anything that anyone has that has come up at this point?
Well, Shelley, there is a question. You were showing some of the um, resources you were naming, Jamboard and all these resources you were mentioned previously. And it's possible to embed it on a virtual learning environment, or you have to work them, like outside tasks, or are they embeddable? I mean, for example, in your learning system management.
Oh,
Um,
that's a very good question. Padlet, Linowit are. Nearpod is its own system. And so a Nearpod, everybody's on there at once, and then they can even do games together. It's really fun. The students love it. They can go on virtual trips together. I mean, it's just a really great one. Pearl Deck, the same thing. It's like its own little system, so everybody gets on there. It's like away from, but you can embed the Linowet, you can embed the Padlet, and you can even embed the Bunsey. Google Jamboard, I think it's a click and then it goes to a page. I'm not sure about, you may actually be able, I just have never tried to embed Google Jamboard. I'm not sure why. But that one you might be able to. And that one's a really fun one. That's a really great one where you can even have them fill out graphic organizers together and all kinds of really great ways to interact with students. So that's a very good question. And that actually really helps with interaction. If it is embedded in the LMS, that would also be a good tip, because then that helps with that interaction in your virtual classroom. And so that would increase that as well. Another way to increase interaction, and also have that learner control, is with a weekly agenda. This is what mine looks like. This is letting them know Monday, Tuesday, this is when we have the classes. And then this is what you are to do that day. Okay. And then it has the final project at the end, and it's all clickable. Even though it looks like I have made this like the design to where it doesn't highlight in the link or anything like that, but if you went and you clicked on any of these, then you would go to that particular lesson, or you would go to that resource for that week. Another way is that to think of it as a learning path, and this is also what a lot of teachers have done, is found a path that students follow and want to follow to be able to complete the lesson or the project for the week. I really like this one. It's a gamification, and if you know how to give a digital badge or a digital sticker, or sometimes if you work with Bitmojis and the Bitmoji extension, I will sometimes in an email just send that. It's really easy to just click my Bitmoji with the gold star or that says wow, and then send that to the student. And so there are different ways in, even in some platforms. I think even Moodle has this, and I know Schoology has it, and Edmodo. They have digital badges that you can award students when they get through this. And this is like a game board. They first have to go to the hook, then they're reading, then their video, and you can adapt this as you want. Maybe you don't want a video, or maybe you don't want the reading. And so the point is, at when they get to the end, they have finished that particular project or lesson, and they have completed that path, and they're awarded in some way. um, the next part, and this is very important too, is to create clear and concise instructions. If you don't want to keep repeating yourself, if you don't want to keep having to say, sometimes I want to reach in and just click things for my students to say, look, it's on the left. And sometimes I have to get another student, and the student will show their screen and share their screen. And when I walk that student, they finally are like, oh, okay, that's where it is. Even though I've told them that it's on the left to click on the left. It's just sometimes like that. And so ways that you can really help with that is to provide visual guides and tutorials. And so what I use are the free tools Nimbus Screenshot. It's an extension. And I know this is a lot, but you can also find a lot of these tools. You can find them inside shellyterrell.com/elearn, and then you'll be able to also um, eh, learn more about that tool if you decide that this is one of the things that's going to really help your classroom. And so you give numbers and little arrows and let them know, okay, so, and then usually you would put this on one part of your LMS. So when you create these little visual guides or these screen tutorials, which are videos that are showing how to click to it, then what you would do is that you would have them on a section in your Google Classroom that maybe says help forum or help desk, and then they would go and they would click. It's like a FAQ. If you ever go to a website, you will see frequently asked questions, okay? And then there in that area you would have links to all of these video tutorials. I love Loom. I use it all the time, every week. It's a way that I can even give a lesson, a quick lesson. It's free for teachers, up to 10 minutes. That you can for each, you have lots and lots of Looms you can do. You have to sign up as a teacher with your teacher email, and then what you do is you just click and you record, and then you show them what you're doing, and voila, it's ready. It gives you a link, you send it to the students. Students can comment, you can even add more links, and that's going to show them how things that are difficult for them, or they just keep asking the same question: how do I turn in my work on Google Classroom, or how do I submit my assignment on Schoology? Then they would be able to see it with the video tutorial. And then finally, the last element, which is a very, very important element, you have seen this around the world, is equality. So McIsaac and Gunawardena also say that social presence is very important. If your students don't feel that the rest of the classroom respects them, respects their beliefs and who they are, then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to give you your best. And want to show up, want to be in your live sessions, want to be part of the discussion. And so it's really important that we let our students know, especially online, we are a welcoming environment. We're going to have a lot of different viewpoints, and we're going to have a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ways of expressing ourselves and in choosing different projects. And we celebrate those differences because they make our class interesting. Then they help us to learn about other experiences. So if your students know right away, those are your expectations. And if they understand you're tough with them about it, like you just accept no cyberbullying, you accept no, oh that's stupid or something like that. If they understand that, and you real they will go to that expectation, and they will begin to help each other and support each other. And that's really really what you want them to do. But if you're even if you don't believe in a certain way, or maybe a student makes you feel a certain way, it's important not to express that, but to express that you celebrate them all, okay? And then they will be very successful in your class. So those were the 4 elements. I've shown you a few things of each, hopefully practical things that you can implement right away in your classroom, and things that we constantly put into our online learning. So it's not that I expect you to go tomorrow and change all your Google Classroom. That would be great. Some of you are going to try and do that because that's the kind of person I am. Um, but really, what I think is the best thing to do is take one of those, one of these elements, and see how this week, maybe it's a choice menu. Maybe this week you're going to introduce one of those choice menus. Maybe you're going to do a student check-in, okay, and ask students right away. That's something that's very, very simple to do. Give me 4. Let me know. Are you a 4? You're excited to be here. 3, 2, 1. Or maybe it's that you're going to have that discussion about equality, and how we expect each other to how we can grow and communicate and learn about each other more. And so all of that also dives into social emotional learning. So you will find resources for social emotional learning also within that website as well. And so it's just making you aware of that. I have tons of resources created for this, but it's important that we do take that time. We may not see it as, oh, that's not part of the academics. I have to teach all these math objectives, or I have to teach these language objectives. If I take the 5 minutes for this every day, well, that takes away from my lesson. It actually gives to your lesson, because your students are going to do so much more if they have all of their needs met, if they believe that you listen, and they're going to want, and that relationship is there with their classmates and you, then they're going to want to do more. And finally, you don't have to do this alone. It takes a village to raise a child. And so one of the reasons the Others Corner has these opportunities for you to come and learn from others is to grow your family of teachers. Connect with someone today. If you see someone in the chat and you have similar ideas, reach out, exchange Facebook, WhatsApps. Maybe they're from the same country, or the same organization, or they teach the same subject, or the amount of learners. Set up something with them, exchange Twitter, and that way they become part of your family to help you. Maybe your students and their students can connect and have a Skype session together, or a Zoom session together, and you can learn from each other. And you can connect with educators online through Twitter chats, webinars like this, online conferences, massive open online conference courses that are free, ed camps, online courses, live streams, online conferences. So there's so many opportunities, especially now. So that's one of the good things about this time. There's so much that we can say bad about this, time of the pandemic. But one of the great things are there are so many opportunities to learn with educators around the world for free. And you can take that time to be able to develop those connections so they can help you teach your group of learners and make you a stronger educator. These are some of the hashtags for different Twitter chats. You can find them at this particular resource, or I would recommend these hashtags: ELT chat, EL chat, e-learning, ESL, EdTech, distance learning, and TESOL. You will find lots of great bloggers, educators that you can communicate with. And if you're on Twitter, that makes it even better because then you can reach out. You don't have to be on Twitter to actually get the resources from these hashtags. You can just even Google hashtag ELT chat or TESOL and you'll find those resources. It'll send you to the Twitter page and you can click and you can still learn. But there's so many teachers on Twitter and it's a great community to find resources. So finally, I want to go back to this idea of celebrating you. So during this time, we all need miracles. And the miracle is you because you are balancing so much and somehow you managed to do this. Somehow you have managed to be there for your students, even with a virtual connection like we have today. You have managed to show care. You have managed to hug through a distance or to help through a distance or to make a smile through a distance. And as long as you have that heart into it, and as long as you continue to come to places where you grow, because you're here with me in the weekend and you don't have to be. So I know you're one of those teachers, and so you have been that miracle for a child, or for a learner or for a student or an adult, and you have made a miracle within their family too. And you never know how far your care and you being there will take that student in their life. So thank you for doing that. And if I can help in any way or I can answer questions or anything like that, these are the places you can connect with me. And I will continue to help share things that will make your life easier, I hope. Thank you.
Shelly,
And
thank you very much. Really, it was a very, I mean, a webinar full with, I mean, information and practicity, actually, practicality. Uh, this is the type of information most of our teachers in our ALT community need to know, especially, I mean, since this is new for most of them. Like online learning, online teaching is not, I mean, something they're used to, I mean, to be working with. So thank you for sharing this information. We do have some questions on the chat. So I'm just gonna have Joel read it for you one by one so you can answer these questions.
okay.
I'll go with first one. With the first one, Alvaro Jordan is asking, and I quote, "How can we increase peer interaction in one-on-one lessons?" He says, "I mean, if I have different students on different levels, that's a question. How can we increase peer interaction in one-on-one lessons?"
Okay, that's a great time when you want to use something like you so that's when you can use something like Padlet or Linowit, and it's a sticky board or Google Jamboard. And so your students can respond to a question and they put a sticky note up, or they can add a resource, they can make a mind map together, they can do all that, and then they can even like each other's and they can respond to each other's. So if you're using those collaborative platforms, then they're able to see, like, I might put, let's say that we're asking about what's your favorite animal, and then explain their habitat or describe their habitat. So if you're very advanced, then you would leave a sticky note and maybe you put a picture of, a penguin, an emperor penguin, and you will give me this whole paragraph about emperor penguins. But then you have someone that is a beginner, and so they might put dog because that's what they know and understand, and they may only be able to put a word or two, brown or furry. So they're still learning off the one who put the emperor penguin. They can see that picture that's a penguin, and then they just learn from that other student that's a penguin, and you didn't have to teach that because they see all the other animals, they see the pictures, and that's what those tools like Google Jamboard, the sticky note, Padlet and Linowit, and even Nearpod and Pearl Deck do. I mean, Pear Deck do. They allow for students to see each other's examples, and then they can learn from that. And it's not just you saying, and that's actually more powerful because they have to comment on it, than just doing an online like Quizlet. And Quizlet's great, I love it, I really think that's a great tool. But if they're learning from a peer, they want to respond to that peer and say, ooh, that's what I liked. I wanted to say penguin, but I didn't know how to say it. And so they may say, oh, I love penguin, I saw a penguin at SeaWorld, or I saw a penguin somewhere. And then it starts from there. So I would say use a tool like Lunuit, Padlet, Google Jamboard, and you'll see that they can learn from each other that way.
Okay, Shelly. Great. Well, our if you listen to that answer, I mean that's I mean quite I mean you're quite satisfied about that. Please let us know. I guess we have some other questions here. Yes, can you read that one from? I mean,
Is the
I
last
think it's
one?
Clavia. Clavia says hello, Shelly.
Yeah.
It's
Read
good
the last
to
one. Yes.
hear from you virtually.
Okay, she says, my question is how to get the best of class time when some students need longer time to finish their task.
That's a very good question as well. So usually I give certain amount of times. We have that timekeeper or I have my time. And then what I do is I leave part of that as so they have little lessons within. We'll do like 5 little lessons. And a thing a tool like Pear Deck and Nearpod allow you to do that. You can have 5 quick assessments. So within a 45-minute period, I can do with the Nearpod. I use Nearpod, but Pear Deck does the same thing. Really wonderful. You can have a collaborative sticky board. You can take them on a virtual field trip. You can have them play an online quiz game together, and you can have them answer a poll and a discussion. Like 5 things in 45 minutes. And they're quick. They're all time, but those tools really make it to where you can do all of that. They're so helpful and amazing. But then they have a lesson like the week one, and that's the one that or that part is also in the LMS, and it lets them know, okay, so usually what I'll do is on Monday they have all of their lessons, all their activities. That's why it tells them that agenda I showed. On Monday I give them that and they know the lessons and what is due. Okay, so that's why it says due on the bottom of that agenda. And then I have it on the LMS as well. So you'll find it if you're teaching on Google Classroom, then they'll have the instructions for that. And they'll get 2 or 3 days. It lets them know when it's due. But when you're giving work that different ones are going to take that time, then you should give them, even for assessments right now, give them, a day or two, okay? And if we're giving assessments that each answer, an open-ended question, then they're able to answer that differently, so that it's less likely that they'll be able to cheat with things like that. And then in the class time, you can have the multiple choice one that will go very fast for most of them. But that's how I would handle it. Um, Let them be able to continue, say, okay, our live lesson is done for today, but you have until Tuesday or Wednesday to turn in this assignment. And then that way they'll have more time to do that. So I hope that helps.
Yes, Shelly, thank you. In fact, the last part of the question was should we let them finish later? I mean, synchronously. And then you just mentioned that. Yeah, I mean, well, you have till Tuesday to finish this task just in case. And the other thing I guess that happens is not only that, I mean, the students are, I mean, maybe some of them are faster in getting the task done, but also it's the way if they have never been exposed to any of these resources before. So some of them get it quicker than others. So I guess sometimes we need to be a little flexible and then leave some space for them to finally, I mean, deliver tasks. So, well, I guess that answers Clavia's
The question.
questions. Please,
Yes.
Clavia, let us
And
know.
that's a very important point that you bring up about flexibility. So during this time, I've learned to let go a lot of things. Students turn in things late. Sometimes they turn it in 3 weeks late. I want to celebrate that they turned it in, because then, and then those students get better. I had some for, you know, 4 weeks didn't turn in anything, and then all of a sudden they turned a whole bunch. And yes, that's frustrating, but now they turn in something. It took that opportunity to just say, okay, I'm gonna accept it. It's still gonna have 20 points off or whatever it's gonna have off, but I'm gonna accept your work because you're trying, and at least you're going to you're doing all of that. And then now they constantly turn in things on time. So we don't know what they're going through. I have had students who have lost a lot of family members. And so it's a difficult time. You don't know if they're traveling because they're going to something really tough, like they lost someone. And so to come on top of that and say, nope, it has to be done now, or you don't have that flexibility. We would want someone to share that flexibility in our lives. And so I have always found that being more forgiving gets more from students, in the long run than it does if I'm just so sharp and no, you should have it turned in. So I think that point you brought up, Johannes, about flexibility is super important right now.
Yeah, totally agree with you. There are many things happening right now, and the fact that we have gone online now in teaching, it does not diminish the fact that we're still teachers and we work with people. And there is a part of this job, I mean, if not most of it, that needs kindness, flexibility, being human.
Yeah.
And that it's, I mean, I know it may be a difficult task to transmit that, over online sessions, but it's not impossible. I mean, we still can give support to students. I mean, we still can be, I mean, we still can stand by their side, show them, I mean, support, respect, I mean, flexibility, company. I mean, it's not just you in the process, I'm also in the process,
Yeah.
because I'm learning how to do, but to manage all these things in order to help you keep learning and not, I mean miss or lose your school year or whatever. So it's a difficult task, but it's not impossible. It can be done. Totally, it can be done. Alvaro says that it's thank you. He's more than pleased with his answer. Clay as well. We wrote some more questions here. Are any of these resources or strategies useful for any educational level? I mean, like it's just for elementary school. Can they be applied? I mean, for adult learning or something like that?
Yes, so the examples that I've taken, I've applied. So some of these teachers, I took their templates and they are using them with college or high school, and I apply them to elementary, to 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds. And the students still love them. I just edit and with any instructional material, I know my students' level. I know like the reading and the words, and I know what they can handle. But because this is so, that's such a good question, because the researchers here, they're talking about designing. And so this design, it's like with any website you design, and that's my background. So my background was first into computer programming, and that's what I learned first. That was my first degree. And then now I have my master's in education. But you always learn when you're developing a website, go through the user's experience. And to design a website simple, the same people, whether it's a child or their parent, is going to go through, let's say, pbs.com or brainpop.com. So how can I make that so easy to where they can click and they get it when nobody's there? And that's how we have to think about our online design. So yes, it does work on multiple levels, because the researchers here and the scholars are focusing on that design. And if your design is simple and it is easy to intuitive, like easy to navigate, there are certain things that students are familiar with because they're with technology. They know, this is, in this for example, this slide, where the URL is because it's in blue and it says HTTP. Okay, so I know if I click there, that's a link. Okay, so because they talk about the design and they talk about ways to make it connect, you get to decide the materials, you get to decide the reading materials, you get to decide the videos and all of those. You get to decide, what you're gonna attached to it, whether it's a TED talk or whether it's a PBS Kids video. So yes, you can adapt it for all levels, and I have used that. I actually teach graduate courses right now, and so I use the same principles, and then just the materials are different.
Great, great. There is one last question here, Shelley, and it says, "What has been teachers' attitude in regards the online learning teaching? I mean, that we're living now. I mean, from your perspective, has there been any reluctancy? I mean, what is your perception on this? Because I guess all of us have seen different attitudes towards it. So,
So, one of my favorite groups that I belong to for my wellness, because I love to laugh, is a Bitmoji group. It has over 500,000 in the Facebook. They share a lot of templates, so I love their templates. But they always do fun things like a Bitmoji of how they feel, and it's always like the one that goes like that, or so we have those fun moments. And so teachers everywhere around the world are so stressed. This is overwhelming. um, we've been kind of thrown into something, and whether you are very good at technology like me, or whether you have been teaching for years and you have not taught an online class ever, you have been forced into this. And I know that's not fair, but this is this, with the situation is, so teachers everywhere are very stressed. And it's not that there's a resistance, because they really didn't get a choice. They have to do this. This is not no longer whether, that debate, whether you need technology or you can be effective without technology. Now it is a must. And so really, what they focused on, and so what I've focused on too, is how to make that easier, less stressful. And so anything that you do, anything to make it a little bit better. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the perfect Google Classroom or the perfect, Moodle or anything like that. But if you have one thing and your students say, "Oh, I love that so much, teacher," and gives you, a gold star, makes a certificate for that one day, they say that was a great lesson, then that's going to make you feel better and want to do more. You're going to want to go do more of these elements. Or that was so fun that you asked me, what kind of, in the scale of Baby Yoda, how I felt. I love that. That was so fun, teacher. Then that's going to make you smile, and that's going to make you want to do more. And so anything that you do, and I know it's very, very tough, but since you're thrown into this, anything you can do to make that easier for you and your students. And I think teachers are getting that. So even though they're super stressed, they don't want to do this. I hear all the time, "I want to be in my classroom. I want to be in my classroom." Um, they're still, doing it. And so I really appreciate that. So I've seen a lot more, actually more than ever now. I've seen a lot less resistance, and I've seen more teachers just kind of ask instead, "I'm drowning, what do I do?" So I think, if anything, that's another kind of positive out of all of this, is that more teachers are asking, "How do I do this better?" And swim afloat instead of asking, "Why should I do it?"
totally, totally through. I was talking yesterday with one professor, and she was telling me just like, "I don't get this online thing." I mean, she was literally pulling her hair, out of her head. Why I was supposed to go like this? I mean, how am I supposed to be using this or that? She was like, and I say, "Hey, I think she's joining us today in the webinar." So I told her, "Go ahead in the
So
webinar,
hopefully
so you
you
can
have
see some."
more hair today.
Yeah, so you can see some tips and suggestions for working online. It's a very tough thing, especially for those who have never worked online before. Totally, but it's not impossible, as Shelly was saying. There are some things that, I mean, you can manage in learning and then applying, and you will see reward from your students. Uh, and even though I don't know what's your impression, Shelly, would like to know, like, even though this pandemic goes away, I think online learning is not going anywhere.
I don't think so either. I think schools are seeing that, in case, more instances like this are going to take place. And we have seen all governments believe that learning must continue, the education system must continue. I don't think that that's something that and even if they switch, the voting, anything for any country, all the governments and society agrees that education must continue no matter what. And the only way you can do that is if there's some kind of element of online learning. So online learning does make that possible no matter what's happening in the world. And yes, the students don't have all the access. Yes, it's inequitable, but I think, it's only going to get better as we do it some more. So yes, I agree that it's not. I'm hoping that they take school systems and the education systems, not just the teachers, because of course you get whatever they tell you. If they tell you you're using, Schoology, or they tell you you're using Meet or you're Google, you've got to do whatever they tell you you're doing. I understand that, but hopefully the systems will get easier and better, and they'll offer much more to help manage everything.
Yeah, we hope so as well. Yes. So, people, thank you for joining us today and making questions to Shelly. I mean, they are sending you regards and hearts in the chat box and stuff, Shelly, for you. And Shelly, it was a pleasure having you here today. Thank you for helping our community. Us at the Author's Corner are very grateful. To you for accepting our invitation. Really.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to have hung out with you today. And hopefully you enjoyed your margaritas, or, your iced tea or something on the Riverwalk while you were with me.
You have anything to say to Shelly?
No, well, we're really pleased to have you here. I was telling Janice some days ago that, well, this year, 2020, we have had some of the best professors in this webinar. So thank you very much for this.
Yeah, it's been a great start. This was the first year we've been launching the sessions, the webinars sections. So we have very, very good presenters, and we're happy to have you here. Our next webinar, people, will be probably by December. We're still checking on that, but we will keep you posted. So we're going to stop the live, the streaming service right now on YouTube, and we're going to be with Shelly closing the webinar and making some comments about it. Let's see. Oh, there is another comment. Thank you, Johannes, for your invitation, and thank you, Shelly, for your wonderful webinar. That's Professor Amy Ujihara from Japan, Shelly.
Oh, nice. Thank you for staying up with us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. Professor Ujihara, for being with us today as well. So, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll keep you posted for our next webinar. Shelly's article will be launched approximately in 2 weeks, the first week of November, on our newsletter. So the link is on the chat. Subscribe to the newsletter and you will get Shelly's article about this topic, this presentation. So thank you for joining us, and we're just going to cut the live streaming.